Hello everyone, welcome back. We are at panel 2, world building and homebrewing, together at last like peanut butter and chocolate. We are going to be getting into this. I am Kelly. I am the moderator of this panel and the host here at Dork Tales. I use he and him, and I am elated to be around these fabulous creative individuals who have blessed us with their presence. Before we hop in, let's do a quick round circle, as opposed to a square circle, I suppose, and let us introduce ourselves, starting with my left, Amy. Right as you take a drink. I used to be a waiter, so that works out.
Yeah, no, I can tell. But hi, yes, I'm Amy. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I am Paradoxical Ghoul in the chat. I am a regular on Dork Tales. I play in many games, and I run the Dork Tales Discord server. So.
Nice. Over to Tasha.
Okay, cool.
No, just you're wonderful.
You're wonderful.
Aw.
My name's Natasha. I'm on here on Twitch as Natasha Designs and elsewhere on the internet. I do co-working and other creative streams such as fashion design, art, book club writing, tons of stuff. So come check it out. Oh, my pronouns are she, they, he, any.
Sounds good. Down to Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Mayfield. My pronouns are she, her, and I stream over at Tabletop Titties. I'm on their D&D Forgotten Guardians show, and I'm also a playwright. If you listen to The Girl Next Door on Spotify, it's my show. I wrote it. Wow.
Someone link that in the chat so people can get onto that. I think that we need to raise its rank today. Let's get that up there. Over to Cal.
Hello, I am Cal. I use he, him pronouns. I am in the chat and many other places as NeoCal. I do some stuff with Kelly on Dork Tales, and I've been doing like Transformers podcasts for 2 years now. Like 2.5 years. And I like to say the world's foremost Beast Wars podcast.
You mean Beasties?
Beasties, as it was known in Canada. And that's called Too Much Energon if you're looking us up anywhere.
I was looking up Not Enough Energon, and then I was looking up Just Enough Energon.
Just Enough Energon, but you weren't looking up Too Much Energon.
Yeah, an adequate amount of Energon.
You know what's funny? That's one of the our like tiers when we rate things. Too much Energon, inadequate amount of Energon, and not enough.
And speaking of someone who, let's give some Energon to Ravnos.
Hi guys, I'm the Ravnos Archon, and my name is Will. I use he, him, they, them pronouns. I have my own channel on Twitch. I am delighted to be here, and I think I'm definitely interested to see what we come up with today to help you out with your home world building and all of that good stuff.
Fantastic. All right, so folks, we're going to be getting into this right now. So definitely give us any questions you have in the chat about home brewing, world building, all of that. But I think the first question that we should always ask when we're talking about building worlds, where do you start? Does anybody have, who wants to kick this off? Where do you start? How do you build a world, Cal?
Okay, you get somebody to say, okay, where do you start? And then you panic about it for like a week. And then you worry about like tiny details instead of the world. Okay. And then you put it off for like another month.
I thought you developed an entire language and alphabet for each of the
before
fantasy
you do any
people.
Of the world. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It needs to be needlessly complex and adjacent enough to common fantasy.
Do I need bloodlines for every character that stretch back 10 generations minimum?
Yeah. So clans and bloodlines. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay. Tasha, do you have a bloodline you'd like to espouse?
So, so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat. So no. I really start really simple. I just
It's a lot of begatting around here.
I have a one-page sheet that says like location influences, like main characters, like plot, and like some questions like that, where it's just like, okay, just start filling in the very basics.
Fair.
I'll pop in.
You pop in, Sarah?
Yeah. I have two ways when I'm doing world building. I will either start with a form of media that I want to like take as inspiration. So whether it's like a book, a universe, Or I'll start with something super dumb. Like, I'll start with, I want the entire planet to be covered in ice. And I want to explore kind of like what that means to the people who live. Like, how is this world powered if it's like so cold? How do they create energy? And like, I'll start with like a little thing like that. Or there's the like famous one that went on Tumblr where it's like, what do you do if pigeons are like godified, right? So I'll start with some little very specific thing and then just kind of expand on that to like, what would infrastructure look like if everything's ice, right?
That's absolutely fair. That's really cool. Like, what would you be able to have? Like, what heat sources would there be? Do you have heat sources? Are the people cold-blooded?
Yeah, I personally did it, so it was all it was like an underground geothermally powered world with like a train system. And because a lot of superpowered rail will actually like cool the rail systems to create less friction. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, so you can have super high speed underground rail in this like ice planet. Yeah, the players haven't gotten there yet, but one day
That's
all
really
of this
cool.
world building will pay off.
And the rails need to be really big because everyone is a mammoth in that world.
Yeah, that's fair. And then we need to
I
go
love
off the
those.
rails.
Yeah.
And speaking, I would suggest that you start small. So the number one thing that really hampers world building is that you think you have to have what Cal and I were riffing about, right? This entire setting, this entire thing right from the start. You can start with a town. And then don't build anything outside of that town until you need it, right? And that's whether or not you need to talk about, oh yeah, there's some unrest in Kingdom X over there. They're really extreme, you know? You start telling that kind of stuff, but you don't actually need to describe what their roads look like until you touch their roads, unless you're describing them as a way of fleshing out your current thing, like, wow, these roads suck compared to the roads in City X, right? So only take what you need. Don't stress. You don't have that much free time. Unless you do, in which case, have fun. Amy.
So I like to go with the a random thought that pops into my head and goes, what if this scenario? So like this morning I was just sitting there going like, you know how there's these fairy tales about like how you have someone who falls under a curse and it can only be broken by true love's kiss. Well, who said true love, like what people only had one true love in their lifetime? Come on. Like what
does that mean your grandma could kiss you? Because your grandma loves you. Right?
Possibly, yeah. Like maybe they give you a kiss on the forehead, but like how does that impact things if people? Yeah, you got a dog who absolutely adores you and just comes and gives you a good like lick, and you're like, oh well, it just licked
the Hershey Company,
and they're fine. It's like what kind of impact do curses have now if that's the consequences, or is there some sort of cultural aspect that makes them think that doesn't work? So why not? So anyway,
fair.
I think you go from there.
Anybody have anything they want to toss on this, or should we start taking a and to answer awkward GM, polyamory's answer to true love's kiss? Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, possibly.
Hey, she lived with 7 dwarves. I think
those dwarves made out constantly.
I think any of the dwarves could have woke Snow White up.
Yeah, and you can do the Frozen route where it's like sisterly love, right?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So serious world building question from awkward GM. What do you do when you realize that you're a few sessions in and part of your world isn't working? How do you course correct and not throw your players off? I would just say address it with your players if you feel comfortable doing that and say, hey, this isn't really working. I just realized that we're accidentally turning this into a police procedural and you're all rogues, and that doesn't work because you're not that kind of rogues, right? So maybe we should have a talk. Your players are at the table. Let them do some of the lifting for you. I don't know. That was a bad pitch. It's a bad pitch. I didn't get my Netflix
really
show on that one.
Story. I would play that.
You have played that, I'm pretty sure.
Well, if Netflix wouldn't even pick it up.
I know, right? Yeah, I got an Amazon Prime deal, but like, yeah. But like, what do you say? Like, how do you get your train back on the rails?
I've had to deal with that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The very beginning of my system that it's in alpha, beta, that I've been building from the bottom. A year into it, I've like had to add some or change some mechanics into it. And as long as everybody, all the players know that, hey, this is the mechanics, or if I'm like, oh, right, I did say that's how faith works in the game. Actually, no, getting a cult doesn't give you magical essence. That's fine. And usually, honestly, you may have even overplanned if it gets off the rails and it starts not making sense. Because like you had said, Kelly, if you start small and then expand out of that, the game can develop itself when you're playing.
Yep.
So don't make so much work for yourself. Focus on like a core concept. Like you are in Village A. Village A is part of Kingdom A. And Kingdom
It's
A
like very
believes in these
Canadian
gods.
place.
A. And
yeah, there's Wayne
that's-
Gretzky. There's
that's it.
the Great God, of course.
And the players will often ask questions that you're like, oh, I never even thought about that. And then you could like make it up on the fly. Or if you're into mutual storytelling, they can throw their own ideas out there and you're like, oh, I'm using that. Yeah, that's true now.
I'm like, you always gotta take notes though when you're making stuff up on the fly. I have a shit memory, and then I end up like in a hole, and they're like, what if we just do this? You said this works, and you're like, I did say that, and it's a good idea, and I'm glad you remembered. So let's go with that.
Fair.
I personally find that when some world building isn't working, like you can talk to your players if it's something that applies to that, and you can always just go like, well, the sources you heard from were wrong. And that can be part of the fun too, right? Like, oh, this is how you think magic works. Well, that's just how like the people in the small town that you grew up in think magic works. The different towns, everyone believes different things, and it exists how I want to exist, right?
Fair. The certain point of view style is magic works that way from a certain point of view.
It's
But
how you end up with
elves-
like sorcerers who like just have it, and wizards who are like, I studied years for this.
I got it from my dad.
I got a sugar daddy.
70-year-old wizards who haven't left their basement versus just really charismatic, cool dudes that are like town heroes.
Voted most.
Some guy that's just like super good at guitar. He's just like so good.
He's just so good. It's like it's hot. It's like 86 hot. Just
I think that's.
I knew that guy in high school.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about jumping off of your point. I think this is the best part about starting small is the fact that instead of painting yourself into a corner, you're painting out from that corner. So anything that does start to look weird, you can just be like, that's a different room. Let's paint in this direction, or let's paint over that with this brush because the color you're using is, like the example is, yes, these people believe the magic works a certain way because they're so removed from the rest of the world. So there are fixes.
And as the chat said, you can always drop a cataclysm on it. Nothing like a big, do the Raymond Chandler method. A man with a gun enters to stir it up, right? Like, okay, cool. Like, if you're running a game that's set in like, fantasy kingdom, then it's really easy to say a war happens, a big bad evil happens, a comet happens, magic changes forever one day. And then it's a mystery. Yeah. Let's pop over and look at another question. What do we got?
There are several.
Yeah, there's so many. How much does crunch impact world building versus world building lead the design of crunch? Oh,
I would say that's kind of depends on the players and the group that you're playing with, because sometimes having the social aspect, you just come up with stuff and you're like, and you kind of just build, and then you have to kind of figure out how to implement that into your world with possibly homebrew world rules, because it doesn't exist in the system that you're using. But sometimes it's the other way around, and you're like, okay, well, there's something in the system, or like you kind of know that you want to go a certain way with it because you know how the rules work and you want to go that way. But And then sometimes you like end up with something like a quiet year where you generate and improvise from there. Which
and
is
everybody
kind of a mix.
should use the quiet year to build their stories. Go look it up. It's amazing.
Very good for intro work. Like if I don't want to learn another system, it's too much.
It handholds you. It's really good.
It's nice.
Tasha.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about like what is the world and the story and the characters leading into kind of any technical aspects, because basically figuring out what you want to talk about and what the characters want to do, and then kind of how are the mechanics going to facilitate that.
Mm-hmm. And don't let yourself be hampered by your mechanics. It is really easy to just hand wave a lot of stuff like, well, magic doesn't work like that in the PHP. And you're like, yeah, well, maybe they found a way, right? Like I could have an engineering degree and not be able to build my own car. Just because I have access to 7th level spells doesn't mean that I know how things work. And reflavor things. For God's sake, reflavor things. In our Strixhaven game, for example, we really spun out on sending stones because there is no game that uses sending stones correctly as basically like really quick use, like 3 times a day walkie-talkie or something like that. My character literally has a Stonely fans account that he uses his sending stone to take photos of himself to make part-time money. Have fun with it. It's your setting. But think about what you want, reskin it. And I think that was one of the big things that people wanted to know about this panel was reskinning. And what is the deal with that? And Sarah, you kind of touched on that before, where you look at what your inspiration is, what your concept is, and then I would suggest use the George. Yeah, use the George Lucas method, where you like Star Wars is a pastiche of like what 6 different things at least.
Originality is just combining things in a new way.
We're in remix culture, baby. So, and someone asked that, Coldrake asked, can you borrow an established world geography but not make it Middle Earth or Azeroth? Yeah, do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My favorite world building technique actually is it was floating around Tumblr for a while and various meme sites, but it's the dice/macaroni creation, where you get a 99-cent bag of macaroni, the small noodles, and you shake them up and then you just drop them on a map or a piece of paper and you trace, and that's how you do like island building. And in our Discord, we've got
tectonics.
It's just play tectonics. You can't control.
It's science.
It's science, right? We did that with, do I have it nearby? Is it right here?
I mean, that's what we used to build
I saw
the
one
Festerel.
Taking a picture of like puddles and stuff like that. And I'm like,
I saw that
and
one recently too.
The way ice melts.
Yeah.
Melting
Parking lot or
snow.
something?
Yeah, that was it.
because it's physical. It has 3 dimensions.
It's so good.
Well, that's the dice method, right? Like, so you do all the dice, and then if it's a high number, it's a mountain, and if it's a low number, it's closer to water level. Oh, we got a map.
So this is literally my planning for the new Arcos region of our homebrew, where there's like we're doing water constantly, and this is a bad map because I'm going to do a big stream where we fill in the details, but
I'm excited for that.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. But Amy, you were talking about how we did use that method for Thestrel.
Yeah, like our Shards of Nirn game. Like I think that was the first time we actually used that method, was to design the subcontinent of Thestrel. And then
you want me to go look for that map?
If you want to, yeah.
Okay, you're the moderator.
It's easy. Oh, okay. Hi, I have power.
Nobody can stop you. Quick.
No, I can be easily stopped. I'm not very willful or strong. But yeah, we use that to design it, and then we kind of branched it from there. So like the actual continent of Telusia and Argeny, we kind of messed around more with like map generators. But that subcontinent, like we were like building like, okay, so like what are the threats? What are the mountains? How does this all work? What are the major points with the different numbers? All had the thing, and we got the legend for it kicking around somewhere. I think we shared it on the
it's on the Discord.
It's on the Discord.
I think so much of world building too is it just kind of depends how much you want to have set in stone, right? So like you can go into a session and be like, start in the small town and you leave on a road, and I'm just gonna roll a dice and we'll see if you find a town or if you see a forest or you see a river. Like, you don't have to have this whole, like, you don't have to do the dice rice macaroni method. You can just go and then see what happens and then like let the world evolve. But this is my one thing as a person who has ADHD, take notes, because people will want to go back and see the dumb gremlin that you had working at the coffee shop. They're gonna love them and they're gonna want to go back.
You mean Smeep Smarkle?
Yeah.
Smeep Smarkle.
Smeep Smarkle. Can I just show of hands? Because we're all dungeon masters, we're all game masters. Raise your hand if you have attention deficit disorder or might have attention deficit disorder. So like literally, this is
Does RPGs attract this? I wonder.
This is wild,
right? They're in a safe place. It turns out that map's in a safe place, Amy. It's in a bin somewhere. But
it must be.
That's when we did Shards of Nirn. I literally did this, where it was like what 50, 60 town names. Yep. And it would be like, okay, you go north, and it's Grimstead. But if you go south, it's you're headed towards Manobiter.
No. I think one of my favorite places was Onion.
Onion was my favorite one. It's a town that was built on onions, and then a gold dragon went in and was like, actually, did you know you have a platinum vein under here?
So like,
I'm going.
This touches in on half of players' favorite thing is when you make up something dumb on the spot. Recently I created a character and I had them speak this dumb language where they were just going like the whole time. And I had never thought of what language this character would, or like what the language would be called. But of course that was their first question. So I can't even remember. I think it was like Bubbledegonk or something. I just like,
Bubbledegonk?
Yeah, Bubbledegonk, the language.
I took that in high school.
That's literally, listen to I'm going to send you the clip, Kelly, because that is exactly the joke they made. But
was it Kelly that made the joke?
I think so. Yeah.
We're always on it's just Kelly's, man. We're on.
But yeah, and like that kind of thing, they're like 4 or 5 sessions later, they're like, I would like to speak to this person in Bubbledegonk because I am fluent. And you're like, okay. And like these random moments are the stuff that people love, right?
Yeah,
I was gonna absolutely say, true.
A lot of times you actually really don't need a map. Like I rarely use maps except for when I'm in a building that someone like has to navigate or has to like do combat in, because for the most part, like, okay, they leave the town and they go to the next town. Do they really need to visually see what that looks like to get there? Not really. Like, are they in a town? Okay, they go to a different district in the town. Do they need to see physically where these districts are in relation to each other? Probably not. Oh, that district slightly to the north. You might not even need a map.
This is really true. I got a great comment on our Victorian era game recently from someone who lives in London or did live in London. They're like, I love your game almost as much as I love your creative geography, but I'll allow it to pass. Because it was really complimentary, but it was definitely like, yeah, that's not how London works, but I'll give you a pass because the game was fun. I'm like, that's all I care about. I'm not here. It's not a travel game. Like, it's not a travel blog, guys.
Okay, but listen, that could be a game.
My response to it was, no, that's actually the way that the city was structured before the doves burnt it down. Because you guys have burned down how many major monuments in that city? 4 now?
Oh, like 3 major monuments.
Oh, that's right. You didn't go back and burn down the cathedral with the vampires in it, but you coulda. Let's see. How much world?
Wait, I'm just gonna quickly jump in. We did have a comment in chat that said some people are like, some players are really visual and they really like the map. I'm just gonna do a quick little devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Where how often are players like, I would like to head east and see what is there, and how often are people like, I want to go to the tavern, or I'm gonna go to City Hall? Most like in terms of like map and needing a map, most players know where they want to go and they don't need to know the route there. They might like be walking, be like, is there an alley that I can sneak into and steal some garbage out of? But they're not, most players won't be like, I need to know if I'm going to pass a cobbler on the way. If they want that, they'll ask
Or it's
for
things
it.
like that where they have to ask a question anyways, like looking at a map, unless
Yeah.
you've gone into the detail of like, here's a cobbler, here's a,
Yeah.
like, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like most of the time they're going to need to ask like, hey, what's around me anyways?
And Random Equinox has stated that 5 buildings were burned down in our campaign. Thank you, WikiLord. I've also put a poll up about how important are maps to you in the chat right now. So please let me know. Maps can be great.
Yeah, maps can be great. I was just going to throw in my 2 cents there. Choose what to zoom in on. Like maybe like a known world map, like their country and like the different islands around it. Why would every single nation know the entire world? Maybe their world is as big as, you know, like the Mediterranean. They've never seen how far south, north, east, and west everything is. And zoom in on a town if they're going to be going back and forth there, or there's combat there. And then you can make use of the maps more. Like the first time they go to the town, you have like a little map. Here's the cobbler, here's the whatever. Not every town needs that. And then when they return, oh, it's under attack from pirates or whatever. Haha, I've already got that map. And yeah, just choosing when to zoom in and out, I think is the most important. Otherwise, you can just, oh no, you're traveling and you're attacked by gobbledygooks. Then you can grab like just a random forest map. You don't need to know exactly how many kilometers in the longitude and latitude of where they are, because the PC wouldn't know, unless you're playing in a modern setting with GPS, in which case then use Google Maps.
Yeah, just use, like, seriously, like there are several ley lines and nodes that have been dropped in Vancouver for cyclists by accident by me. You know, for various mage games and things like that. Like, oh hey, some were already there, which was kind of weird. Ravnos.
I'm gonna pick up Sara on my segue because there are games like L5R or 7C that have these beautiful world maps, and no one has ever cared where a castle is, where a city lies on the beach. Like they've never been like, oh, cool. It has always been like, where are we? You're in this area, and this is the lay of the land. So you have a lot of leeway when you're creating something. So don't feel like you have to be like, the tavern is on the corner of this street and this avenue, or this street and this street, and it's like this exact distance from nobody cares. Like at the end of the day, they're not gonna sit there and be like, you said it was 6 miles away, why are we there so fast? Nobody's checking you on your facts. You'll be fine.
Tasha, did you have one? No. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the times maps are good for kind of atmosphere. But for me, I'd rather usually, unless I need the map, use like an image. Like, what does the town look like when you're on the street? What does the forest look like when you're walking up to it? What does the building look like? How do you get in, kind of thing, rather than drawing out a diagram or a map.
That's fair. And it does make a big difference if you're like, oh, it looks like the Shire versus it looks like Yarnum from Bloodborne, right? They're the same place, really.
Oh, definitely the
hobbits climbing ladders. Sara.
Yeah, like I think my last kind of thought on this is it also depends what kind of game you're playing, right? Like what kind of table agreements you have. Because I've played really loose, like rules light thing. Like on Tabletop Titties, we really are centering on story, so we're not really focusing on, oh well, do you have enough rations to last you this long? Versus I've played other games that are really crunchy in terms of like, you got to make sure like every night you set up camp, every night we'll do like, see what happens. And that is when I think maps come in handy, because if you're doing like a big kind of exploratory game where you're like, oh, I'm going to go X number of hexes into the woods this way, and then we'll see, or we're going X this, I think then a map can be really useful, but it just depends on what kind of game you want to play, right?
That's fair. Next question from the chat is, what comes first, the world concept or the chosen game mechanics? So I guess what that's saying is, do you pick the game first and then do the world building? Or do you, that's a tricky question, because I'm going to say that you should probably, for most cases, people will choose the game before they choose the setting or come up with the setting, because they choose what they know. But you could do it either way.
I'm
regardless,
the opposite. I choose the
Are you?
concept and then add mechanics on top.
I think
of
the
it.
concept is the most important. Absolutely. But oh, I guess you're right. So who does game choice first? Like, we're doing D&D and then I'll create a D&D world, or do you go, I want to create a fantasy world, I guess I'll use D&D?
I think that I usually create the world and then I'm like, can it be done on D&D or do I have to figure out another system? Like I got lucky when we did our sci-fi thing. I did the Dimension 20 thing where I just took Star Wars 5e and I flavored it. So it was fairly easy for the D&D players to transition. But sometimes you just gotta like explore new systems and see if they'll follow the story that you want to tell better too.
That's fair. Anybody else want to weigh on this?
Yeah. It's difficult because I was going to say definitely choose the setting, like what story you want to tell first, and then the mechanics. But when it comes to things like D&D, 5e is so very much like 5e that it kind of doesn't even fit into other fantasy settings.
I will disagree with that wholeheartedly, my friend.
What I mean is, when, let's say we're playing Dragonlance, right?
Okay. I see. Okay, fair. You're about to make a critical point on me.
Go ahead. What point am I?
No, you zounds. I am wounded, sir. Go ahead.
And then it ends up playing like a lot like the wizard is wizardy, the sorcerer is sorcery, and it plays like D&D. Oh boy, you can cast level 3 spells. Here comes the fireball. In which case, it's a little weird to adapt that mechanical system into a world that is not D&D, because it just can't escape feeling like D&D.
Like 5e. And what Cal's saying specifically is that Dragonlance is originally designed for D&D 2nd edition. And they've reinvented it for 5e, but 5e has so many mechanics and things that don't work with that 2nd edition vibe. And now we find ourselves constantly like retconning or adjusting things on the fly in the module so they feel like the books, even though it's designed, it's a literal campaign setting for 5e that they just didn't adjust. They're like, oh yeah, warlocks and sorcerers are the same thing.
Wizards, warlocks, sorcerers, elves, bards, anything that magic.
Oh yeah, bards and elves are definitely the same thing.
Same thing.
I get well, that's why we've had to hand wave it. I've been answering tons of YouTube questions about like, well, what would you do if somebody wanted to be a cleric of this? And I'm like, I would wing it. I would just lie to myself and make it fun. Like, the book is not your boss, you're bigger than it. I hope. If the book is bigger than you.
And then it might be the Mage 20th edition.
Yeah, the Mage 20th edition is larger than all of us. That thing's thicker than my neck.
One day I'll finish reading it.
No, you won't. Nobody does. That's a lie. Amy, you were about to pop into something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, listen, let's run a World of Darkness multi-splat, but use D&D 5e rules and see what happens. I think I just
I'm thinking of ways to do. Okay, so Amy, does that Chronicles of Darkness or World of Darkness?
I challenge you to do this as a one shot.
Done. Do it.
Amy,
we do TBN. Well, come on.
Okay, so here's where you younger players who probably got in about like what 2000 after 2006, because in 2004 or 5, Monty Cook put out Monty Cook's World of Darkness, which was a D20 based all splats World of Darkness combined game. I'm not even kidding. It's not half bad, actually. Because Monty Cook, he does good stuff, but it's this little known forgotten book. We could actually get a hold of that. I've got a PDF of it somewhere. It's this interesting, we'll talk about it later, but Ravnos, you know what I'm talking about.
We'll talk, we'll discuss for Extra Life, see what we can come up with.
Because it came out in like right as they were ending the World of Darkness original death in like 2003 or something like that.
I've actually seen the book in person.
I've held it. I didn't buy it.
Fireball,
Yeah.
like,
I like
officially.
you guys are
hold on,
talking
hold
about
on.
like long lost relics. Like I've held
yeah,
it
yeah.
in my hands.
Yeah, this is like Luke Skywalker's lightsaber.
power
Like,
Long
emanating
lost
from
relic
the sacred
texts.
the sacred text. You know where I was going.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off with the sacred text.
I'm interested
No.
in what the rest of you have to say about like mechanics versus setting, because I feel like it does matter.
It's weird to me because I always will come at its system first. Somebody will tell me that they want to run a game or that they've never had a good game run for them, and I'll be like, I got you. And then I get stuck running a system. But other times you find games like Dune, which is the Modifius 2D20 system, which is fantastic. I love their momentum mechanic. So it's weird. I'm an outlier, I think, in that way.
I think everybody needs to. I've posted the cover for Monty Cook's World of Darkness in our private chat. The art sums it up. That's the game right there. Look at that long black hair. It's so good.
Stunning.
It's stunning, right? That's the tribal tattoos. It's like definitely 2004. You can hear Nickelback in the background, you know. Maybe some Creed still. I don't know. With thumbs wide open. Anyway, so we had a question that was earlier there from Young Lister. What purpose do you create a rule for, or a world for? And then Coldrake's asking, GM preference, do you make your own worlds or just use pre-made worlds? And I think those two questions tie in together. Does anybody want to look at that? Like, why create a world in the first place? You know, because who doesn't want to be a god, first of all?
Yeah. So I can
It's a
kind
lot
of
of
jump
work.
in on that because
Do
like
it.
there are some settings that I love it and I want to mess around in that particular world. But in the case for our, like, especially for Dork Tales, like our homebrew setting, we've kind of kept it pretty consistent to this one singular world that we've just been expanding and expanding and expanding. So that for that, generating it is wonderful because a lot of the players are involved in the creation. So that part, it's this very community based, everyone feels connected to some part of the world because we've, like, either our character backstory for one game has created a significant cultural feature that now exists in canon as part of this continuity, and that someone else may then incorporate into their own backstory or expand upon. So we're all kind of communally working together on that. So in that case, it's like, well, we've come up with it, and now I'm just kind of a fan of our world now that we have built, and I what can I say? I'm a fan of our world.
I think but that's the best part though, because that's how you get your players invested, you know?
Mm-hmm. So unless it's something like Dragonlance, where like that is the setting and world, and you know that you all want to be in the Dragonlance world to tell a story in Dragonlance, or if you just really like the lore of the Forgotten Realms, like, so you go and do that. Like, so if there's lore there that you like that clicks with people, I think that is really important for whether or not you use something that exists or if you make something up of your own.
I'm always going to advocate to create your own thing because people have expectations about stories. Like, you can't, if you run a Middle Earth game, like, people have expectations about how hobbits work, how wizards work, how Sauron and the Dark Ring and all that. But if you create a homebrew, like, you're the only one that really knows what's going on, so you're the only one that gets to say when something is wrong. And so like that goes back to the whole, like, you can't paint yourself into the corner if you start at the corner.
That's fair.
It's
Amy,
a good
you brought up a
way to visualize that.
It really is. Amy, you brought up a great point with the idea of, like, the way that, for example, like Dork Tales does its homebrew. And this was brought up during the DMing 101 panel, how to make your players care. And one of the ways to do that is let them be part of your homebrewing. Let them help you design parts of, if you're using gods, the Pantheon. If you're running like a modern day Chronicles World of Darkness game, something like that, any type of modern game, ask them to come up with a name for the bar they hang out with, or the restaurant, or, you know, the high school they go to. If you're playing a high school game, like, let the players come up with it, and like give them, sometimes, little DM tip, give them the toddler outfit questions like, do you want the duckies or do you want the sailboats? Don't be like, what do you want to wear? Give them the 2 outfit choices. But like, be like, hey, give me, who's the English teacher at this high school? You know, if you're doing a magic high school, well, what is it? Just a general high school? Is it a trade high school? Is this for magical artificers? Like ask specific questions. And if it goes somewhere that you don't want to run as a DM, just communicate that, because nobody wants to be in like, I don't know, like it could be really easy to go down a path that you don't enjoy. So be very careful with what you want to do too, because the thing that we really try to remind you is that you are a player at the table as well. Okay, Tasha.
I think that leads into one of the other questions that we haven't gotten to yet, but in the sense of like, oh, there's something that I need to put in my world because my players are doing this, but it's like I don't have inspiration for it. It's like, okay, well, talk to your players. Like maybe they do have inspiration for it, like, or build it with them in game, because the question was saying they don't have time to like do the GMing work. The players don't, but like they have time when they're in game, like they're there, use their help in the moment. And also like just be like, hey, I don't really have any inspiration for this. What do you guys want to see from this? Like you guys want to interact with this group, like what do you want from them? Do you want them to be antagonistic? Do you want them to be friendly? Like do you want them to be stylistic in a certain way, you know, kind of thing? Get your inspiration from the players, or just do a Google search.
Yeah, use the hell out of Google. I use the hell out of image generators, Google word generators, name generators. FantasyNameGenerator.com is I'm there more often than I'm at Gmail, I think. Like it's amazing the amount of names and words and things that you pull up. I have entire binders and binders of names where I'm just like, oh, that's a cool name, right? So there's nothing uncreative about using generators. You're using them as seeds because you're thinking about a lot of stuff every day. Be kind to yourself, okay? What other questions do we have besides me failing a lot of edgelord rolls? How much world building do you...
Couple, yeah.
How much world building do you do before starting play?
Only as much as needed.
0. Cal, you do 0?
You've known me for years. It starts with an idea, and if that idea is, what if this group of like vampires didn't hate each other and they were cool bros? Where did you get that idea? I got it from Lost Boys, that 80s movie.
Excellent.
And then a LARP comes from that. Or what if it was kind of like in this world, but it was a little bit like cooler? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, go. And then the details fill themselves in. And like I think it was Sara that said that at one point, maybe it was in the last, maybe it was brought up in the DMing panel that had recently gone by, but if you're home brewing, it can feel like or world building, both. It can feel very intimidating, but it's okay to change things. Whether it's like a session 0, like, hey, what do you guys want? Do you guys just want to like fight everything? Do you want to be Spartans? Or do you want to be like, you know, like diplomats? Or do you want a little bit of both? How do you feel about social stuff? Social combat, going off of ideas first and foremost. And maybe all the players don't have the same like vision or idea that you do. And then if you see if you can like compromise and build on it as you go. But there's definitely road
or trade off too, like
bumps.
Oh, okay, this scene is, you know, for this character, and that scene is kind of going to touch on this character's strengths and that player's what they want to do.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. If somebody is definitely not built for combat or like whatever, have the world. This is a good one. I don't know why I never thought about that. That's a good point. Have the world kind of appeal
have options
to the player's strengths, the PC's strengths. So you're
Both
like, I
the
never
players and
planned
the
on there
characters.
being
The
like
players are going to be good at certain things, and then their characters are going to be good at certain things.
I never planned on like having them stranded in the woods and needing to like find food. But I mean, this character has like 5 dots in survival, or like they really want to go and like forage and be like a woodsman,
Let them use their
right? So
strength
get them
because
lost
they
in
put that
the
on their character for a reason.
yeah. So have the world kind of reflect all their strengths, and that'll be better than like, wow, I have like 30 experience in this thing and I've never used it. Like 8 sessions
Also,
in.
if you're uninspired, look at your players' character sheets, especially if they're detailed, and be like, oh, what's a weird little detail they have? Do they have an item they haven't really got to use, even though it's really cool? Did they get an item from like the last game? And like, what's an opportunity I could give them to show that off and have fun with it? Or did they make a new relationship? What could I do? Oh, well, we need an NPC. Oh, but they really liked this guy from a couple games ago. Like, let's pull them back in because I'm uninspired. I don't know. Oh, I already invented one.
Nice.
Yeah. I think like circling back to the how much world building do you do before starting? I think it really depends on like how long the game is gonna go. Sorry, my dog is getting antsy.
That's what they do.
How yeah, he's cute. That's what he's got going for him. So it's like how much like and it's also how similar do you want the world to be to what they know? So if you're
Mhm.
going to play a world that's like kind of similar to like Lord of the Rings, when they encounter things, they'll kind of know what to expect. Versus if you're going to create, if you want to play in a universe that's very unfamiliar, like I'm just going to throw out like Annihilation, where if you're not
Mhm.
super familiar with that world, but everything is kind of foreign and nature's invasive. So depending on what kind of world you want to create
Oh, I'm so wanting
and
to
what
run an animation game.
experience is I'm gonna do one like literally like I'm so excited. Anyhow, okay. So it's just depending on what kind of world you want to create and how familiar your players are with it. But also you have to know as a DM that you're gonna do if you want to create world building ahead of time, 98% of it isn't gonna make it in game. And
Yeah.
most of it is just gonna be for yourself and just for you to have fun fleshing out this world, but most of it isn't gonna be in there.
Fair. Cal, what do you have on that?
Yeah, piggybacking on that, the the more you prep for it, the more you might find yourself shoehorning some of your ideas in that will confuse the players because you had over prepped. And that's not just my form of ADHD where I absolutely can't plan anything, but I can remember the NPC they talked to in the bathroom like last year. Uh, but
Why is it like
you
that? Why is
I some people don't think it be like it is. Uh, but the over prepping and you're like, oh, I really wanted like this villain, and then you have this villain show up because in your mind they've been doing this in the background. That's just it might feel like the PCs aren't moving the story, and all of us, I think, everyone listening and everybody here in the panel can probably remember games where the PCs were second to the story that the GM wanted to tell. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
That's not good.
It's a hard one because sometimes you
Because
need
they
to have
had an
these big
idea in their
moments.
mind for what their world is and what they want to tell. And
Oh,
then
thanks for the tip.
sometimes the PCs get in the way of that, and that's a no.
Yeah, we definitely should talk about things like that and DMPCing because a lot of people say that it's a cardinal sin. I think it can be done right. I think it absolutely can.
Oh, of
but like a
course.
lot of things, you got to be careful. It's light touch. We should talk about homebrewing, but there's one question that just popped up that I think we should address, and that is young listener asked this a few minutes ago. Thanks for asking my previous question. I was also wondering, how do you navigate appropriation and safety within world building? And I think that's a fantastic question because there are many things, particularly in fantasy world building, where it is very easy to completely other a real world group of people, or to say, I mean, there is a D&D 3.0 book called Oriental Adventures, for example.
I
that
have
doesn't
that.
really
I have a
right, but
physical
that's not
copy of
really
that.
that. Thank you very much for the tip, Bong. That does not really like that's not cool. You know, but say you want, say, like an Eastern setting, like an Eastern influence, like a Japanese influence setting or a Korean influence setting. How are you able to pull those elements
Navigating that
in?
line.
Yeah, safely. Or, for example, orcs and half orcs are a huge, or goblins have huge
And goblins.
baggage. Goblins in particular have a huge, like presently, a huge amount of historical like baggage attached to them. How do you navigate this? I'm gonna let you guys decide this. I'm gonna watch.
I'm gonna just tap in really quick. For in terms of like
Right, I'm out.
playwriting, one of the things that always comes up is, why are you telling this story? So, like, why do you want to set your story in this setting, and why do you want to use these influences, and can that effect be achieved through different means? So if you know that you're going to be touching on risky subject matter, and if you aren't fully comfortable touching on that subject matter, and you aren't sure if you're going to do it in a respectful way, look at how you can get the same effect that you want to achieve through different means, is my thoughts on that.
I think one of the biggest things about that, and a way to kind of look at whether you're treating something respectfully is not, is, okay, why am I interested in this setting, whatever type of character, etc. And then research, okay, like I like it because I feel like it would be really like maybe like it would have all these like associations and attributes to it. Research, are those associations and attributes accurate, or are they just stereotypes? In which case, like, okay, should I maybe not actually do that because it really isn't associated with these things in reality? Or, oh no, okay, these are like legitimate things that this culture is actually, they're proud of, they're all about this. It's something that they enjoy sharing with the world. Okay, like, yes, that's fair. Like, let's lean into that. Versus, no, they'd be pretty offended if I presented them in this way. Let's not do that. Let's find another culture, or make up a new culture or character type or whatever.
Yeah, as somebody who runs Legend of the Five Rings, one, the world itself is filled with history, so do your research. That's the first thing that you have to do, is just kind of read about the world that your game is going to be set in, or if you're homebrewing, just kind of pay homage in a very respectful way. So learn about the culture that you're going to be reading about or trying to play in. And one of the things that I do as a kind of communication is key, first of all, but I also have a litmus test as whenever I'm running an L5R game, where I will have a peasant wrong a samurai by either looking at them or accidentally spelling something on them, and having the players react to this samurai wanting to take the peasant's life, because by all accounts it's within their right by the caste system that exists in the game and what it was back in the day. So it sets the tone of the game, and it kind of lets me know where they're going to be at as far as how to handle peasants and the caste system itself. And if it's an issue, then I scale that back a lot. And one of my players loves a cast member that's the lowest caste, the Edda in L5R, that I brought in to kind of deal with the dead bodies, because samurais aren't allowed to touch the dead. And I gave him a New Jersey accent. I gave him a little New York accent, and they absolutely love this guy. But one of the other characters absolutely hates him because he understands his place in the cosmic order of things, and he does not give a good goddamn about it.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything they wanna weigh in on for the dangers or the gentle?
Yeah, I would
Gentle
love
touch?
to. So I think that even if with like the best of intentions, there's always a chance that you will still do it by accident. And being willing to acknowledge that and make changes to your setting and your world, even after you've developed it, is something I think people need to be willing to do. So if you realize that you've done that you have made even completely unintentionally a connection that leads to appropriation or is leaning into too many stereotypes, don't like, you're not stuck. You can change that still. You can acknowledge it and do better. Yeah, this is like, you can do a retcon. You can say, oh, or maybe in the world people, they believe that, but that is not, things have like changed. Find a way to adjust it, modify it, and bring it somewhere different so that you're not, don't think that, oh, I've made the world, I'm stuck with this.
Don't be
No,
afraid to
change
make
it.
change and
you
just
can
be
change
like,
it.
admit like, hey, I just realized maybe this is not where I want to go with this. Let's see what else we can do.
And this is why it's important to bring your characters into character world creation, because then you get more eyes on something, you notice problems. Oh, hey, these dwarves are acting a certain way that's real weird. And you're like, really? I didn't think so. And they're like, yeah, they are. They are, bud. Sarah.
Yeah, I think my thing is a lot of like, I found that some issues like this can definitely be targeted through consent forms, session 0 consent forms. If you're like, I don't want to experience any like race versus race antagonism in this game, and then you're just like, cool, that just won't be a thing in this world. So like establishing if players are comfortable tackling these issues is also important, and what kind of game you want to create. But also something that I think is really important to acknowledge when we're looking at these forms is like as a queer person, if you have I don't want to talk about homophobia on your form, you have to acknowledge that that means that you can't really tell queer stories. So looking at
I disagree with that.
forms, well, think of it I'm not talking about like loving another person, but if you're not tackling, like if homophobia isn't a thing in your game, right? How does your character struggle with coming out?
Okay, does that world even need to have that concept, right?
Yeah, like
we're dealing
coming
with
out
different worlds.
If homophobia doesn't exist, is coming out a thing? So if you want to tell a coming out story, you have to acknowledge that there needs to be some kind of barrier against and a reason why you have to come out. So if you want to tell these stories in like whatever platform or game you're choosing, you have to acknowledge that those issues have to in some way be existent in the game.
Okay, I agree with that, where it's like, okay, well, my character doesn't want to deal with homophobia, but also wants to deal with a coming out story. It's like, okay, where are we balancing this?
Exactly. Like what's and can you be resistant to the opposition and to be, to exhibit that like sense of pride and sense of identity without opposition? You need the negative space to press. That's just real. This is session zeros and consent forms are so useful. We run a game that's set in the Victorian era for Mage, and it's an all female identifying cast, and we constantly have the misogyny talk. Like, how much misogyny do you want? They're always telling me more, which is funny to me. I'm always like, are you sure? I was really mean. I was really bad. And they're like, more. Because then they get a light.
them for it.
I know. I get lit on fire a lot.
We will fight.
And I'm a safe, like, I set up safe ways for you to vent, right? And because everybody, a nice comfortable straw man to punch, do it. Sometimes it's good. Our chat's so good. Our chat is so good.
It's going up.
And young listeners on point. If you want to tell the story, you have to acknowledge the oppression is kind of the vibe. Yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of what you were saying, right, Sarah?
Yeah. Like, you can't have a story against oppression without the oppression being present in the world.
So we have about 15 minutes left. We need to talk about homebrew. I'm going to tell you the quickest thing about homebrew that I can. The really easy one is if you have a monster manual trying to do something like that, reminder, those hit points are an average. You don't have to use them on a monster. If a monster has 350 hit points, that is an average. They're whatever you want. Just be consistent. And 2, reskin the hell out of things and save yourself time. If it looks like a Yeti, sounds like a Yeti, but has different powers than a Yeti, you it's a Yeti. It just has fire powers now, because you're in a volcano country. Like, make your life easy. Life is hard. Make gaming easy for yourself. Tasha.
My biggest tip on this is that if you make a homebrew item or creature or antagonist or whatever, and you're like playing the game and it's not balancing, you're the GM, just fucking change it. Like, if you're like, this battle is going to last an hour and it was only supposed to last 10 minutes, just fucking change it on your sheet that the players can't see. That's why you're the GM. I mean, it's a little bit different when you're using like pre-established monsters and stuff that are already supposed to be balanced. Then it's more like, what's gone wrong here that my players aren't dealing with this appropriately. But when it's your own shit and you made it up, like, just fix it.
To quote Rose Bailey of Vampire the Requiem fame, game balance is a lie. So don't worry about it. Game balance is a big old lie.
Or if you made a character's item OP, talk to them and be like, hey, so can you agree with me that maybe this isn't working? You're one-hit KOing everything we deal with. Can we balance this out? Get their consent before you nerf their shit, at least.
Yeah, talk to them about it. So we have Amy, you wanted to pop in something, right?
Well, I just noticed there was a really good question about asking about handling consent forms, etc., when planning a one-shot.
If only we had a consent panel coming up on Sunday. Is it Sunday that's coming up?
I'm trying to remember
we
when
have.
those were, 'cause-
Love,
Love, Sex, and
Sex, and
Consent is on Sunday. Yes.
Nice. So you should definitely come back from that. But a great place to do this is actually to go to the Tabletop Titties website. You have a bunch of consent forms on there that are really handy.
tabletoptitties.com/resources. We got everything.
Air horn. Burr, burr, burr.
We also because there's been a few things that have come up in our own game that aren't on common consent forms, so we've added them. Specifically, like there's like divorce is something that a lot of people go through that a lot of people don't want to handle. And that's something that's on there. There's all the main ones, but definitely a good resource to use.
That's fantastic. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes before we have to do our wrap up. What else do we have?
I'm just gonna quickly say, make your villains weird. If you're creating a creature, make them weird. There's no reason why not to give them an extra face on their shoulder that spews lava and the rest of the creature is ice. That can be fun. Just make them weird.
Up ridiculous monsters to throw at players, like the Quacken.
The Quacken's great.
Maybe instead of spewing acid, they spew a lot of teeny tiny pieces of licorice that infuse into their skin and cause acid damage through just the potency of the licorice. Like, flavor them in weird ways.
The best thing in Wild Beyond the Witchlight is custard damage that you can take from getting custarded by clowns and other things like that. It knocks you out eventually, but it won't kill you. But it's custard damage, and it's amazing.
Oh, and it can accumulate and knock you out?
It can knock you you can stun you at the very least. Yeah.
Horrifying.
Right. Tasha, more about custard damage?
More about like creative inspiration. If you're like struggling to come up with like a creature or an antagonist or whatever, again, look at your players, your characters' strengths and weaknesses. Like, what monster would really challenge them? What would make them think of a different technique than they've been using for all their other battles? Or what would give them a chance to like do something really cool that they don't really do? Or what would give them a chance to work together in a way that they haven't been doing so far? How can you make them combine their skills to defeat something?
Fair. That's a good idea.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster. Asking people who are supposed to have been friends since childhood to actually like help each other. It's like asking the players to be good guys.
It's their choice.
I'm just saying, like, I remember the rage I felt when our DM Shar gave my fire-based sorcerer a creature that was resistant to fire, and I just remember being there and being like, well, I'm gonna go sit in a corner. And that creates really fun ways for you to be like, okay, well, I can't, none of my stuff was really working, so I'm gonna try other ways where I'll like help other people to do things, right? And like, it's great.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
All right. Occultist Anonymous asks a speed round question. What is your favorite world building bit you keep bringing back? Amy, you can probably answer for me too. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if this is the one you're thinking of, but I am always coming back to regional variation in stories,
Regionals.
in place names, in just everything. Like, these people, do they talk to each other? Do they have a common language? Do they call each other the same thing? Or is it like, oh, I call this thing something else entirely different because I speak an entirely different language? Or are these two people from the same original like race and culture, but there's been such a long time between that the language has changed because it's been 1,000 years? How much has that happened? Do they call the gods the same things, even if there is a common pantheon? Like in Elos, we have our Vela is a goddess that keeps coming up. Well, in some places she's called Vela, in other places she's called is it Umvila or something?
They something or other. It's on the wiki.
Yeah, it's a different, there's similarities there. You can see the connection, but they call it something different. And I love that. I love
Umvila.
it.
Yeah, it's Umvila, not Vela.
Yeah. Or having like two different names for the same person, and that just being, oh yeah, no, this person just has two titles and they are used interchangeably, and we just accept that. That's something.
Oh yeah. Did you know that Nirn has two different names besides Nirn? So there's Nirnir in the Underdark and Nu Rinur in Apesh. I forgot that was in the wiki.
I think we also may have changed like the name of the floating continent to Vale multiple times. Like, I don't remember if it's
for copyright purposes. Yes, it's Valimar.
Yeah.
It was Valheim for a little bit, but it was like, it's not really a Heim.
Yeah.
I don't know. Felt a little weird. That's why it's a living world, guys. Cal.
Just piggybacking onto what's going on.
Hop on.
With the piggyback onto your world there. That is literally my favorite thing. And the players I have in my homebrew game and my own system too are like, oh, like, we're people with like powers, but like we think we're like exalted, or we were special, or we were chosen. And then they meet like random people from a different like culture. Maybe they were from the same pool like 1,000 years ago, like you had said, right? And they believe they're actually like avatars of existing gods,
like cabbages,
and has nothing to do with and they follow a fate, and they're very like loyal to their country, and they're like, no, we're special, F the gods. Or like another country, and it's just like, oh, actually there's just two gods, the sun and the moon. And it's cool because you can zoom in. You don't have to have this huge world. You just have to have like 2 or 3 countries, but they're different enough in that, well, hang on, the Nords call, like this god, this thing. But like, the Khajiit, the cat people, like they call it, they have the same name of the god, but it's twins. And that's the moon. They're the moons or whatever. And it's small and it's little, but it's kind of realistic when you just give them little things like that to like chew on. It makes the world feel unexplored. And all my games have to have that exploration. So that's my like bit that I always bring back. It's that, no, the players and they're the authorities that they like talk to until they become the authority. It's unknown. Go out there, explore. Oh, ghosts don't exist? Well, how do you explain ghosts now? Maybe there's dinosaurs.
Dinosaur ghosts. Like our cars run on dinosaur ghost people. All right. Tasha.
I mean, this might be more homebrew than world building, but for me,
Same
my
diff.
favorite trope, yes.
Same diff. What is it?
For me, it would be like having a villain who's like believable and sympathetic enough that there's a real chance that the characters might actually agree with them by the end of this, and that there's like actually that potential for this real world of like people who agree with this villain and people who don't, and like what is the conflict. And I think, Kelly, you've had some games that play on that too. So
on what? I'm sorry. Maybe a few, yeah. Is anybody? Let's see. What else we have? So we're still doing.
I'll pop in on favorite world building bit. It's not going to be my bit. It's Char's bit. She has this character named Marge that she brought in I think it was the first episode of our very first stream. And oh my God, it was so funny. And we fell in love with her. And now, like, every single show we do, she'll bring back the character, not really explain why it's there. Like, all of our shows have a character named Marge with the exact same voice, who has the exact same personality. And it's just such a fun bit. And we're always like, whenever we play anything, we're like, when are we gonna meet Marge? Because
Beautiful.
we know this character is somewhere in the world, whether or not we've met them yet.
That's
so you have like
fantastic.
a reoccurring character. They're not always exactly the same, but they're
Yeah.
part of the cinematic universe.
Yeah, but it's like part of the joy of this character is that it's never explained why they're always there. So it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's just like some Franken thing where like you'll just go into a store, your character will go into a store and like, whoa, Marge is behind the counter. And then we try to see a reason behind it. Who is this character? Why are they here? And it's not, they're just there, which is so fun.
That's really cool.
My
Ravenous,
cabbages.
my cabbages. Do you have something that that you like to bring back in your world building?
It's less world building, but it definitely is part of the campaign creation process. Whenever I sit down to discuss characters with my players, I always ask them to give me their name first. Because I feel like you can't be introduced to a person unless you know their name. And so I kind of, because all my friends hate coming up with names. So I'm always like, what's the name of the character? Let's start there. And then that kind of starts the lubrication process for all the other questions that I come up with.
Fantastic. And then Amy, you'd know almost probably better than me. What's the thing that we keep bringing back in Dork Tales? I saw Robin in the chat say it was Goosifer.
Oh, that is one of them. Certain deities that keep showing up in places we don't expect them to, like or Juthis, the cleric of trickery.
Oh, Juthis? Yeah,
that's
Juthis.
yeah, Juthis shows up a bunch. I don't know. We have a lot of like cameos is very common.
Yeah, that's true. I noticed they started to do that on Critical Role recently, and I'm like, I did it first. That's my bag, Matt. How dare you? How dare you stand where he stood? But yeah, I think the best part about doing homebrew, though, is that you get to make something your own, and you get to share it with your friends. So I hope this panel was somewhat helpful for that, and you came away with some good ideas on homebrewing and world building. Let's go around in a circle. Let's go in reverse order. Ravenous, will have you start us off. Let's say who you are, where you come from, where we can find more of you, and if any last words.
Oh, hi guys, I'm the Ravenous Archon. My name is Will. You can find me at twitch.tv/Ravenous Archon, where I run my own tabletop stories and games. I will be found at McStabber Studios, where I'm going to be player for the first time in a long time in a Dark Ages vampire campaign. I'm going to be running a Star Wars campaign over there that I talked them into. But you know, I'm as always, I am honored to be a part of this group, and I'm so glad that I was invited to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Cal.
Hey, I'm Cal. It's been great talking to everyone here. Yeah, I am in Dragonlance on Dork Tales at 7 p.m. PST, and I play a very elfy person in that. I just play elf. You know, the elf of the group. And if you're interested in, say, like Transformers or Beast Wars or that animated television from the 90s reboot, yeah, Lasercomb Productions on anything where you can listen to podcasts. Videos are on YouTube, and yeah, it's basically somehow got roped into talking about like cartoons and shows for the last like 2.5 years, but it's been really fun looking at things through a lens of an adult versus how I remembered them as a kid. So yeah, one of them is Too Much Energon, another is Alphanumeric for Reboot, and yeah, that's about it. That's my claim to fame.
Everybody go check those out. Sarah.
I once again am Sara Mayfield. Once again, my pronouns are she, her, and my social media ads are at Sarah McCupcakes because I thought I was so cool in grade 9 that I just solidified that, locked it in. You can find me at Tabletop Titties with double D's on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere you can find podcasts. I'm currently on our Forgotten Guardians show, which is our D&D show, where we are a final band of warriors, kind of trying to right the world from a like undead warlocky incursion. We're gonna defeat them. I play like a himbo, so you gotta, it's good. Also, I wrote The Girl Next Door, stream it. It's great. We have music. We don't have the show anywhere, so you can't see the show, but you can listen to the music. Basically the same thing. With Painted Fern Productions, which I founded, and we're also doing local shows. So if you're in Vancouver, specifically the Deer Lake Art Gallery on May 13th, and you want to hear me sing, wow, come to Spring Into Show Tunes. It's in my link tree. You know you want to. And that is my plugs.
Thank you so much for being here. Up to Tasha.
Hello, my name is Natasha. I'm here on Twitch at Natasha Tuskovich Designs, and I'm on the rest of the internet mostly under that username as well. I do a lot of stuff like fashion design, I do co-working, I do art, I do writing, book club, just tons of variety stuff, as well as the majority of my time co-working. So come check that out if you like chill streams with lo-fi and that kind of thing. It was great being here with everyone.
Over to Amy.
Hello, I am Amy. Wow, my pronouns are she, her, they, them. They continue to be those. And I am Paradoxical Ghoul on Twitch and on Discord and in most social media. I think on Twitter, I might just be Paradoxical Ghoul because I think I ran out of characters.
I think you did.
Anyway, I think I did. I was annoyed about that. But yeah, I live on the Dork Tales Discord server. I run that place, and I also am a regular here on Dork Tales in many, many games, including the Mage's Ascension, the Victorian Age game, including the long-running Shards of Nirn since the beginning, and just a bunch of other ones. So I am here all the time, and sometimes I even stream video games on my own channel, which if you want to watch me play games terribly and scream a lot while I try and kill things, that is the place to do it. I will try and stream again soon. I promise. I say
That's
that
a
a
good
lot,
place
though.
to do it. And finally, I've been Kelly. Thank you so much for being here. I use he and him. I'm normally the host here at Dork Tales, and thank you so much for being on this panel, everybody. Thank you for watching the panel. And we have a fantastic one coming up in just a couple minutes that is exploring gender and identity in tabletop role-playing games with the moderator, Bunny Hearted, is going to be here. Quick reminder, though, that Dork Tales Expo is a fundraiser for the channel. So if you have any coins under your couch cushions that you can put together, please drop them in the tip jar below. You can also support us directly on Patreon if you'd prefer not to use PayPal, or on our Ko-fi if you'd like to use a credit card or something like that. It's always fantastic to be here with you, and there are incentives all over the place, including new ASMR videos, extra games, and so much more. So from all of us to all of you, thank you so much for being here, and we'll be right back in about 10 minutes. See you there. Bye, everybody.